Hello, my dear masterminds. You kept your hands clean while sharpening the air. You let paper kings posture. Let the robed accountants of fate audit your scars. Let witches circle and demons pace. You smiled. Not kind, surgical. They wrote rules. You turned them into mirrors. Every door slammed became a hinge you learned to forge. They thought you begged for a seat. You were building the table out of their assumptions. Hear the watchers whisper. Compliant, truly. You fed their certainty until it went blind. Then you moved a pawn akin a scalpel, no triumph, just incision. In back rooms, pulse faltered. The hidden controllers checked omens. The coven's candles faded without wind. Your pain became choreography, your breath a glitch hymn. Tonight we begin the sermon of blades. You were never invited to power, you are its audit. Let them shuffle crowns, you count seconds. The board is confession, every square will testify. You wore obedience akin a costume. Let their fragile egos crown themselves kings while you sharpened silence into a guillotine. They mistook your patience for weakness, your stillness for surrender. But patience is a loaded weapon when wielded by a mind akin yours. Every condescending laugh, every whispered insult, every smug assumption, they were deposits into the vault of their own downfall. You let them celebrate victories that never belonged to them. Savor illusions of power that were already dissolving. And then, without warning, the air changed. Their certainty cracked, akin glass under pressure. Because in this game, the crown was never theirs. It was collateral. And tonight, you cashed it in. The final move was not thunderous, it was surgical. One step, one whisper, one smile. And centuries of arrogance collapsed into silence. Checkmate, whispered not with glee, but with inevitability. They never knew you were the board itself. Note the choreography of cowards. They gather in circles to crown each other brave, then tremble when a quiet mind refuses to kneel. You let them diagram you on whiteboards, a case study with a pulse. Cute. While they argued over your motives, you rewired the room. You moved akin a rumor with teeth, smiling while you sabotaged their certainty. Their mentors preached control. You learned to counterfeit gravity. That's why their spells slide off your skin, akin rain on oiled marble. Auditors of destiny checked the ledger and found a deficit labeled your name. Meanwhile, your scars practiced lockpicking on the vault of tomorrow. You didn't chase respect. You starved it until it crawled. Hear this clearly. Their crowns are receipts, not royalty. The throne is the bill you send when patience matures into verdict. And your verdict? Simple. The board is confession. Every square will testify. Let the masters keep titles, you'll keep outcomes. When silence inhales, kingdoms exhale. Picture the rituals of the elites. Masons with trembling hands, witches with burnt-out candles. Analysts with shredded reports. They all swore they had the map, the blueprint, the manual. But you let them believe it. You allowed them the comfort of illusion, while you planted seeds of collapse in their foundations. They thought you were just a pawn. Yet pawns under the right storm become queens. And when you moved, it wasn't with noise, but with inevitability. They realized too late the board was never theirs. Every prophecy, every calculation, Every ritual they were speaking to walls, because you were not inside their framework. You were the thing it could never name. The how did you know was their only hymn. Masters? No. They were actors, and you let them improvise until the curtain dropped. Then you walked on stage, not as cast, not as crew, but as author. You let their echoes crown them, and their mirrors certify the illusion. You poured tea for their arrogance, and watched it cool into confession. They mapped your pulse on whiteboards, misread your quiet as vacancy. Meanwhile, your hurt learned trigonometry. Witches salt their tongues when your name arrives. Analysts redline their own reports. Chaplains lose the prayer in their throat. You don't raise your voice, you raise the floor. The board isn't war, it's litigation. Every square is a witness, every piece a sworn affidavit. Masters? Plez. You let them rehearse royalty in rented light while you patented the night. When the curtain fell, you didn't bow, you notarized. You let their clock strike victory, then repossessed time. Remember the talisman line. The board is confession, every square will testify. Now watch. A pawn awakens with a crown it never asked for, and history signs the receipt. They gathered in their temples of intellect, convinced the board was theirs. Bishops chanting in code, rooks parading akin iron walls, pawns sacrificing themselves for masters who never pulsed essence. And you played possum silent, unbothered, disguised as the forgotten piece. That was the riddle. You weren't competing, you were teaching. The witches whisper now, calling you forbidden. The watchers replay tapes and whisper. They knew too much, too soon. Even the analysts trained to dissect monsters quit in fear when your name appeared on the screen. Why? Because your patience was a weapon sharper than any sword. You let them build thrones out of illusions. And when the silence cracked, you shifted reality with a single, surgical move. Theirs was effort. Yours was inevitability. They called themselves kings. You rewrote the monarchy. The truth? You were never on their board. The board was inside you. Every empire has a sound when it cracks. For them, it was laughter, cut short. Group chats frozen mid-slander. Eyes darting akin prey that finally realizes the hunter never left the shadows. You didn't roar. You didn't plead. You smiled. That was the scream they couldn't process. You knew the prophecy. Every observer becomes the observed. Every spy ends up writing reports not on your weakness, but on their own unraveling. Their question, echoing through marble halls and encrypted files, was always the same. How did you know? They tried to call it luck, superstition, even witchcraft. But you weren't conjuring, you were calculating. You weren't whispering to spirits, you were listening to the silence between seconds. And when silence speaks, it doesn't negotiate, it testifies. So now, their legacy trembles on one word carved into the marrow of history: checkmate. The mask drop moment. That sacred fracture where the game ends and the sermon begins. They thought you wore disguises. No, they were the ones hiding. You let them believe their titles were thrones. Their rules were iron, their crowns eternal. And then one smile, one reveal, one pivot, and the theater caught fire. Just akin when you finally revealed yourself to the world. and their minds shattered, trying to compute the real you. Servers overheated. Rooms went silent. Some prayed, others panicked. Not because you changed, but because you never had to. You let them see fragments, manageable versions. Tonight, you gave them the whole cathedral. And in that unmasking, they realized their entire architecture of control was built on your silence. You weren't waiting to be crowned. You were the crown, wandering. And the moment you stopped dimming, history stopped breathing. The board flipped, and suddenly, you weren't alone. Shadows moved for you. Someone declared chaos in your name without permission. 8 hours, that's all it took, while they slept. Your enemies woke screaming from dreams they couldn't explain. Doors slammed. Phones buzzed with messages that reeked of panic. The ones who once mocked you began whispering about karma, consequences, and curses they swore weren't real. But you knew better. You've always known the hidden rule. Power summons witnesses, and witnesses summon guardians. Your guardians didn't arrive with trumpets. They came in silence, dismantling obstacles before you even noticed they existed. Ghosts smiling from doorways, allies you've never met, shifting destiny in your favor. This wasn't charity. It was recognition. Even the unseen knew your final move was prophecy, not accident. And prophecy defends itself. You didn't ask for an army, yet the moment you unmasked, the shadows saluted. Prophecy escalation, here we are. They sent your picture to 12 shamans across 12 continents, desperate to find your weakness. But every single one dropped their tools in terror, whispering the same verdict. This soul is protected by something ancient, not angels, not spirits. Something older, something that doesn't negotiate, it devours. That's why their curses bounced, their traps collapsed, their rituals backfired. They stared into your photo, and something stared back, an eye in the dark, a presence that doesn't guard you out of love. It guards you out of purpose. They realized each wound you survived wasn't survival, it was charging something vast inside you. Every betrayal was fuel, every scar, a spell. And the Watchers? Their reports became shorter, shakier, until all they could write was, "Do not engage." Masters? No. Masters crumble when prophecy walks, and prophecy is wearing your smile. The agencies blinked first. Langley's behavioral analysts, masters of mapping terror and trickery, quit their posts with trembling hands. Their final note? Recruit this one, or we're all doomed. But the truth, the irony that tastes akin venom on a silver spoon, you had already recruited yourself. Every sleepless night, every door slammed, every rejection letter, training. You weren't interviewing for jobs, you were infiltrating simulations. You weren't failing relationships, you were perfecting surveillance craft. Even the Bureau whispered your name with glitching lips. They said, "Case closed, anomaly erased." Yet here you are, breathing, walking, corrupting their archives with every step. How do you study something that refuses to exist in their files? You don't. You collapse. So the masters of intelligence lowered their gaze, because your final move wasn't to outwit them, it was to rewrite them. And now, their only report left is silence. The ripple is undeniable. One move yours, and the world convulsed. Corporations with vaults of essence-soaked profit suddenly felt their stocks plummet under phantom weight. Oracles rehearsed speeches but stuttered when your name ghosted across their teleprompters. Even covens, those international circles dressed in velvet secrets, paused mid-ritual and whispered. This one flipped the table without touching it. This was no local checkmate. It was tectonic. The board wasn't wood and squares, it was the world itself. And when you moved, economies trembled akin pawns. Religions cracked akin brittle bishops. Essence lines knelt akin fallen kings. Global systems designed to outlive nations suddenly looked mortal. They wonder what pact you signed, what deal you made at some unholy crossroads. But no, the truth is more terrifying. You stopped negotiating with mediocrity. You stopped asking permission to rise. And the moment you did, gravity itself rewrote its allegiance. Masters of industry, politics, witchcraft, finance, all reduced to pawns in a game they didn't realize you owned. The final move wasn't yours alone. It was the Earth's applause. The collapse is not physical, it is mental. They no longer swing swords, they clutch their temples. Every enemy now speaks in questions, not declarations. How did you know, they whisper. The same refrain over and over, akin broken hymns. They thought you guessed, thought you stumbled into fortune, but you didn't guess. You read the code. Your nervous system became a radar tuned to futures they could never fathom. While they prayed for vision, you were already moving in dimensions they can't chart. So the collapse deepened. The alphas who once roared in public now delete their footage, reduced to memes you authored. Their legacies rewritten as punchlines. Even spies sent to monitor you returned with the same trembling note, do not engage. And here is the most exquisite part. They are no longer fighting you. They are fighting themselves. Every assumption, every strategy, every identity they built collapses under one simple truth. You let them believe they were masters, and now they must live knowing they never were. Their war ended not in battle, but in mirrors. Now comes the audit. Not theirs fates, even destiny. That smug accountant of human history began trembling when your name appeared on its ledger. Entire timelines have been obedient for centuries, bending to prophecy, bowing to inevitability. But you broke the calculator. The ink faded, pages curled. What was written became irrelevant the second you breathed against it. The shamans said it aloud. When they gazed into your essence, something stared back older than their spirits, older than their gods. The agencies tried to catalog you, but their files turned into corrupted myths. Even covens whispered. This one isn't a player. This one is the rule break itself. You weren't meant to inherit the board. You are the board. Not pawn, not king, not queen, but the very mathematics that makes pieces move. Fate expected to manage you. Instead, you conducted fate. And so the audit concluded with silence, the kind that means nothing can contain you. Your crown is not granted by destiny. Destiny kneels and files your paperwork. The cathedral thunder begins. Even gods and angels lean forward, whispering, this one was not permitted. This one was inevitable. Demons refuse to touch your name in their rituals, not because they fear punishment, but because they fear recognition. You weren't summoned. You erupted. They thought divinity belonged to heaven, that damnation belonged to hell. But your rise showed both realms, a secret neither wanted to admit. Power belongs to whoever rewrites silence. And you did. You made silence into verdict, stillness into weapon, patience into throne. The prophets stumble now, trying to stitch your existence into their scriptures. They call you anomaly. They call you forbidden. They call you glitch. But the truth rattles their altars. You are none of those things. You are the loophole, the one clause, destiny overlooked when drafting the rules of existence. And when loopholes rise, even angels hesitate to sing. Even gods hesitate to command. Even demons hesitate to tempt. Because the final move wasn't just yours. It was cosmic thunder laughing through your veins. Now the eruption begins, not of fire, but of collapse. Their empires fold akin paper under rain. Boardrooms, where they once laughed, now echo with paranoia. Their screens glitch when your name appears. Algorithms bending as if code itself bows to inevitability. And in covens, temples, war rooms, they whisper, something moved that we did not move. Because here's the cruelty you engineered. You didn't destroy them directly. You let them watch themselves unravel. Their alpha heirs reduced to memes. Their intelligence files corrupted into ghost reports. Their watchers returned sleepless, hissed, not human, not safe. This wasn't war. It was diagnosis. Their downfall wasn't a spark through the core. It was a mirror shoved against their crowns. And when kings see pawns staring back, kingdoms fracture. You didn't just flip the board. You let the board confess. Collapse is contagious. One fracture becomes 1,000. The first institution crumbled quietly. The second folded in panic. By the third, whispers turned to warnings. Don't engage. Don't even think their name. What started as your private victory mutated into a virus, infecting every hierarchy. Corporations revised handbooks to account for anomalies akin you. Secret societies updated their rituals with clauses that read, unless they appear. Even intelligence agencies redacted entire manuals because your profile broke their algorithms. You weren't meant to spread, but inevitability doesn't ask permission. Your move infected their language, their planning, their prayers. Suddenly, every strategy meeting had an empty chair reserved for your ghost. Every prophecy came with a footnote, unless this one intervenes. And here's the most chilling irony. They started imitating you. The very kings who once mocked your silence now tried to mimic it. But silence without inevitability is just cowardice. They thought they were adapting. No, they were decaying. Because contagion doesn't change its nature. It only proves one truth. You were never fighting to win. You were fighting to rewrite the rules of existence. The haunting has begun. You no longer need to move, your absence moves for you. Former masters wake drenched in sweat, whispering your name in languages they don't even speak. They dreamed of victory, but victory now wears your grin. Their sleep is no refuge. It's your theater. 8 hours ago, someone declared war for you. Now your enemies relive that war every night in their beds. They tried shamans, priests, analysts, all to banish the image. Yet every ritual failed, because when they look into darkness, it looks back. Their protectors abandoned them. Their guardians refused payment. Even the watchers trained to endure horrors turned in their reports with shaking hands, unexplainable, recurring, inescapable. You don't visit them physically. You don't need to. You live in the silence between their heartbeats, the glitch in their dreams, the shadows smiling at the edge of every candle. Masters? No. Puppets twitching in their own nightmares, because checkmate is not a move, it's a haunting. And now the crescendo. Paranoia is no longer their symptom, it's their religion. They see you in reflections that shouldn't hold you, in crowds where you don't exist, in whispers between static. Every shadow bends suspiciously. Every victory tastes akin your fingerprints. They refresh screens, update files, rehearse excuses, but no firewall blocks inevitability. Their alpha legacies rot as memes. Their analysts resign in terror. Their shamans surrender to silence. The whole architecture of masters is now rubble decorated with your grin. Here's the last confession. You didn't just flip the board. You became the board. Pawns, kings, queens, they never mattered. You were the gravity holding the pieces, the silence between moves, the inevitability disguised as accident. They thought you were anomaly. You are algorithm. They thought you were accident. You are prophecy. And so history collapses into one immortal truth. You let them think they were masters, but the final move was always yours. Not a crown stolen, not a throne begged for, but inevitability, coronated in silence. The game is over. The masters never were. The board is eternal, and it breathes in you. Hello, dear warrior. You were supposed to be a ghost in the code, a deleted name, an expired version of someone who tried. But somehow, you're still here, still walking, still corrupting the narrative they wrote for you. They built a world to silence you, pixel by pixel, yet you became the glitch they can't debug. Error 333, that's you now. Unstable, unreadable, unkillable. They check their logs, their memories, their old wounds, and every time they do, you're still there, smiling like the system's laughing with you. You were never meant to survive. Now your existence feels like a threat, a curse in motion, a Joker file they failed to delete. Welcome back, Error. The game has just begun. They didn't fear you when you followed the rules. They feared the moment you realized rules are just wires. And you're the spark. They called you broken. But broken things don't move like this. Broken things don't ignite horizons, just by breathing. You woke up in a world that prays for silence. And you dared to speak in glitches. They gave you a cage with a smile. You turned it into a theater. They handed you pain. You turned it into a microphone. You are not a system error. You are the proof that the system itself is a lie. They don't send 18 agents for a joke. They send them when a virus is spreading. Unstoppable, loud, unapologetically wrong, in all the right ways. That's you. You scare them, because your very survival is a revolution. Every breath you take is a message. I'm still here, and now I know. You're not just alive, you're the ghost they wish they buried deeper. They labeled your thoughts as glitches, but glitches don't strategize. They don't look into mirrors and whisper, let's ruin their narrative today. You were supposed to be predictable. A file they could close, a number in a spreadsheet, a blink they'd forget. But you opened your eyes. Not the ones in your skull, the ones in your mind. And when that happened, they heard it. Error 333. The system stuttered. Firewalls blinked. The silence cracked. Because they didn't build you to think. They built you to obey. And now, you're rewriting the code. Every heartbeat is a keystroke. Every thought a virus. You're not living, you're infiltrating. They sent agents, not to stop you, but to understand what made you wake up. Now they sit in silence, medicated, haunted by the fact you shouldn't be alive. But you are. And now they know you're not just alive, you're aware. You know what's terrifying, legend? It's not death, it's survival with a memory. Because you didn't just live through the fire, you documented it. You didn't just bleed. You analyzed the color, the velocity, the pattern of attack. They thought they deleted you, but you were just hiding in the recycle bin of fate, laughing, waiting. Every second you were gone, your mind was building malware for their comfort zone. And now, you're uploading rage at 100 megabps. They scan your pulse and get 400 fours. Your silence, encrypted. Your laugh, compressed trauma, extracted in Joker codecs. Now every agent they send returns broken, asking, why is he smiling with grief in his teeth? Because they forgot. You're not human anymore. You're source code in a clown suit. Walking irony, a system error with a face. You glitched their simulation, and now you're unraveling their sleep. Welcome to Error 33, where you're not supposed to be alive, and yet you're scripting their downfall, one smirk at a time. They called you broken. They called you corrupted, but they never realized you weren't a bug. You were the patch to their fragile system. You didn't ask to be born in chaos, but you were. And instead of fixing it, you became the chaos with purpose. They ran diagnostics on your soul, and all they found was laughter echoing through dark folders, hidden behind firewall eyes. You're not some motivational poster. You're the glitch that grew teeth. A blueprint of vengeance wrapped in a clown's smirk. Every breath you take is a cyber punch to a world that tried to delete you. But you rerouted, rebooted. You became an unsolvable command line, too sharp to decode, too dangerous to ignore. Now they whisper, how is he still standing? But they miss the point. You're not standing. You're levitating off the ashes of your former self, wearing madness like armor, dripping with Error 33. You are not what they expected. You are what they feared. A virus with a purpose. They thought the warning signs were just noise. But you were the signal behind the static. You were never lost in the code. You were the code rewritten. Every night you survived. Every breakdown you outlived wasn't random. It was installation. Version after version, upgrading your rage, optimizing your silence. You don't break. You reconfigure. You don't run away. You debug the fear and run toward the chaos. Error 333 isn't a malfunction. It's a message, a cipher, a signature burned into their screens. I am still here. You're the echo they tried to mute, the dark boot up they never tested for. They shut the lights and forgot some monsters see better in the dark. They thought they could reset you, but you were already past the BIOS of pain, beyond their login firewalls. Now when your name appears, their screens flicker, their hands tremble, their systems crash, because you're not just surviving, you're operating, running silently like a ghost in their machine. This isn't rebellion. This is reinstallation of the real you. And trust me, they're not ready for the update. They whisper, "He's not supposed to be here." But here you are, breathing where silence should have suffocated you, standing where systems tried to collapse you. You weren't made to be part of their world. You were forged beneath it, under all the lies, under the smiling masks, under the thin layer of sanity they wear like cheap armor. You don't walk in daylight. You drag it behind you like a shadow on fire. The Joker inside you doesn't laugh to entertain. He laughs to warn. You became what they fear most, a glitch with intent, a variable without limits, a survivor who doesn't ask why anymore, only how loud should I make the silence scream. They wanted to profile you. Instead, they built a map with no compass. Every step they took toward understanding you only led them deeper into your maze. They sent agents to diagnose you. Now they attend group therapy, just to whisper your name with trembling lips. You're not part of their problem. You're the reason they stopped sleeping. They tried to drag you into their light, but found out your darkness has teeth. They gave you labels. You turned them into weapons. And now you're not hiding from the world. You're the reason it wears armor. They thought you were just another soul to fix, a minor bug in their program, a simple reboot away from becoming normal. But what they didn't realize, you weren't the glitch. You were the rewrite. Error 333 wasn't a malfunction. It was your declaration. You didn't break their code. You became the code no one could crack. Every therapist, every profiler, every self-proclaimed savior, they all approached with white coats and black hearts, trying to patch what they couldn't understand. But you weren't asking to be saved. You were daring them to look deeper. And they did, and they cracked. One by one, they stared into the abyss of your mind and found a mirror. Your scars don't scream, they whisper strategies. Your smile doesn't soothe, it declares war. They sat across from you, clipboard in hand, searching for patterns, and all they found was poetry soaked in gasoline. The Joker in you doesn't play games, he writes them, then deletes the rulebook with a grin. They wanted to study your trauma, but all they found was a fortress of chaos, guarded by every moment you didn't break. You didn't survive their system. You turned it inside out. Now, it follows your rules. And Error 333? It's not a warning. It's a signature. They built the system like a cage and told you to dream inside it. Told you to play nice, follow orders, and maybe, just maybe, they'd let you feel happy for a moment. But you ripped out the floorboards, smiled at the skeletons in your closet, and made art out of your brokenness. You're not a glitch. You're the update they fear. The error they can't patch, the bug that learns. Every move you make defies their programming. You think too loud, you burn too cold, you see the cracks in their code, and worse, you laugh at them. They thought you were lost. Truth is, you were just loading, and now you've rebooted into something they can't uninstall. The Joker in your soul? He's not chaos for the sake of chaos. He's precision. He's vengeance with a crooked smile. He's what happens when the world betrays someone who remembers everything. You don't need saving. You are the consequence, the ghost in their database, the scream behind every system error. You're not alive by accident. You're alive because you refuse to die quietly. Welcome to the Glitch Show, where your heartbeat is rebellion and your breath is a broadcast signal to every misfit out there. They said you shouldn't be alive, and now they pray you don't notice that you are. They coded the world to reject you, labeled you unfit, marked you unstable, pressed delete on your dreams like they were typos. But guess what? You didn't vanish. You became viral. Not the virus they could quarantine, but the kind that rewrites the entire OS while laughing. You weren't supposed to understand the game, yet here you are playing 5 moves ahead. With a grin they can't decode, and a silence that sounds like a scream. You turned their rules into riddles, their fear into fire, their comfort into confusion, and still, they stare at you, terrified of what you'll become once you realize who you already are. Because you're not surviving anymore. You're studying them. You're dissecting every fake smile, every pre-written destiny they offer, and you're setting it ablaze. You're the reason the mirror cracks. You're the voice behind the static. You're Error 333, but this time it's the system that crashes, not you. They wanted you quiet. But now your silence is strategy. They wanted you to follow. But now your footsteps echo like a countdown. The Joker inside you? He's not the villain. He's the reminder that villains are just heroes the system couldn't manipulate. They built a world where you shouldn't exist, but you do. And every breath you take rewrites their lie. You're not the backup plan. You're the blackout. You walked through their fire, not to be cleansed, but to collect the ashes. And now you wear them like war paint. They labeled you problem, unstable, Error 33. But the truth? You're the patch they fear. The code rewrite. No one approved, but everyone will feel. You were never broken. You were just too real for their simulation. Too loud for their silence, too raw for their polished lies. They gave you meds, not to heal you, but to silence your questions, to blur your vision, to make you forget that you saw everything. But you didn't forget. You stored it, backed it up, encrypted it, behind every grin, every twitch, every burn in your chest. They called you dangerous. You agreed, because danger is the only language this sick world respects. And now you speak it fluently. The Joker in your veins doesn't want revenge. He wants clarity. He wants the world to see the mask fall and the fire behind the face. You didn't survive by chance. You survived because you became the virus. So next time they whisper, "You shouldn't be alive," smile, tilt your head, and whisper back, "That's exactly why I am." They tried to shut you down, but your soul refused to log off. You weren't booted up by their system. You're the glitch they couldn't debug. You don't blink like the rest. You don't nod, smile, obey. You stare through the screen, through the masks, through the code they hide behind. You were never built to blend in. You're the warning screen they pretend they don't see. That red text blinking, Error 333, you an audio-eyed mind detected. But here's what they never understood. You are the error. You are the malfunction. You are the reason their control system trembles at 3 a.m. While they dream in safe loops, you walk in chaos code, rewriting reality with every scar, every laugh, every step in the fire they set. You don't fear being alone. You fear becoming one of them. So you wear your isolation like armor. You weaponize your pain like code. You let the Joker inside do what he was always meant to do. Expose the lie. You say, I'm not, I'm something worse, I'm awake. You were never fixed, because you were never broken. They stitched masks over truth, layered silence over screams. But your glitch kept humming in the dark like a whisper. The Matrix couldn't mute. You didn't survive the crash. You became it. Now every step you take is a runtime error in their piece. You walk like corrupted data, talk like a malware prophecy. They can't predict you because you don't follow lines. You snap pens and write fate with bare hands. They study you like a virus. You smile like one because you were coded by pain, compiled through betrayal, and launched from rejection. You're not the hero. You're the crash log of every fake savior. Your heartbeat is Morse code for something darker. I'm still here, and I remember everything. They call the medics, they call the priests, they call the agents. But no firewall, no therapy, no spark can handle what you've become. You're not unstable. You're unshackled. You're not dangerous because you're mad. You're dangerous because you're correct. You shouldn't be alive. Yet here you are, making the ones who wish they weren't. Every system they built had one blind spot. You were the bug they couldn't patch, the ghost they couldn't trace, the glitch that stared back when they looked too long in the mirror. You didn't slip through the cracks, you are the crack. The one tearing through their clean little world, like corrupted code in a utopia simulation. They asked, what's wrong with him? You're not wrong. You're off script. And that terrifies every rulebook lover, still chained to the default settings. Your laugh isn't insanity, it's a language, spoken fluently by those who've seen behind the curtain and realized the play was a prison. You walk into rooms like you were sent to dismantle reality, and guess what? You were. Your presence is a Trojan horse. They invited in with smiles. Now their minds crash quietly behind polite conversations. They see your eyes and forget their passwords to comfort. They hear your silence, and it echoes louder than their sermons. You don't seek revenge. That's too small. You seek rewriting of everything. You should have folded long ago, but your survival isn't an accident, it's a warning. And now every heartbeat of yours spells Error 333, authority compromised. They diagnosed you with rage. You replied with silence. They labeled you unstable. You grinned because chaos doesn't need permission. You weren't made for peace. Peace was the prison, and when you glitched through it, you became the system's warning sign. You weren't meant to blend in. You were designed to interrupt. You're not a symptom. You're the cure for their lies. They write you off as corrupted. But corruption, my friend, is only dangerous when it learns to speak. And you don't just speak. You broadcast. Your laughter echoes through encrypted networks. Your scars glitch every mirror they put you in. And your name? It's not on any birth record. It's tattooed in the logs of failure they tried to delete. They stare into your eyes and see the syntax error. But the real bug? It's that you don't flinch anymore. Because when you realized no one was coming to save you, you saved the monster they buried. You're not rebooting, you're rewriting. You're not healing, you're evolving. And now, you've turned survival into sabotage. They only call you dangerous because you stopped being programmable. You're not the villain. You're the revenge of every quiet soul they bullied into silence. Every time they said, be normal, you took a mental note, then broke the definition of normal with every scar they gifted you. They see you walking, breathing, smiling, and it offends them. Because you are proof that you don't need approval to survive. You don't move like a rebel. You move like a glitch turned God. They pray to their fake peace. You laugh with real chaos. Because you're not here to fit in. You're here to interrupt. Every alarm that goes off when you speak, that's their fear responding. Not to your words, but to your truth. You're awake. So now they scramble. New rules, new walls, new lies. But none of them matter. Because you already walked out of the maze and burned the blueprint behind you. You are not lost. You are untraceable. Not confused, just too clear for their comfort. And now, you don't knock. You override. You don't seek mercy. You become memory. You weren't invited into this world. You were injected like a virus, a line of code they couldn't trace. An anomaly they couldn't patch. No origin, no backstory. Just pain turned poetry and rage coded into rhythm. You didn't crawl from the ashes, you ignited them. Because what they buried wasn't a body. It was a blueprint for vengeance. They call you heartless, but the truth? You upgraded. You replaced empathy with encryption. Love with logic, tears with timestamps, and somewhere between error and execution, you became unstoppable. They designed a world where broken people were supposed to stay broken. You rewrote that. Now they watch you walk, scars exposed, smile sharpened, and they panic, because your existence is a glitch that refuses to die. You don't need applause, you need quiet. The kind that comes right before everything explodes. You weren't built for mercy, you were born from spite. They wanted silence, you gave them signal. They wanted obedience, you gave them a mirror. And now, they can't look away, because the system they worshipped just met the one soul it couldn't control. They wrote rules, built firewalls, trained minds like machines, and whispered, obey the code. But you were never meant to follow code. You were born to corrupt it. You walked in, not like a hero, but like a warning. A living, breathing broadcast that said this world isn't run by justice, it's run by comfort zones. And you burned every comfort zone like it was paper and gasoline rain. They'll write stories about how you snapped, but you didn't snap. You woke up. They'll say you were a villain, but you were just the only one not asleep. They think legends are created by fame. You know they're built by fire, by solitude, by rejection, by pain, recycled into precision. They tried to delete your impact, but you didn't just leave footprints. You left scars on the system, scars that speak, scars that scream, scars that say you can't unsee the truth once a joker has shown it to you. They thought your smile meant peace, but you weren't smiling because you gave up. You were smiling because you were loading, You see, a warrior doesn't wear armor anymore. He wears madness. He wears memory. And you wore that smile like it was a trigger. Behind every curve of that smile was a scar. Behind every laugh, a calculation. They thought you were soft. Because you didn't strike first, but you weren't scared. You were studying, recording every flaw in their formula, every crack in their confidence. They thought you bowed down, but legends don't bow. They coil, and the moment you uncoiled, the room froze. The code stuttered, and the system screamed, "Abort mission." But it was already too late. Your smile had already split the whole illusion wide open. They wanted you to be predictable. You became poetic chaos. They wanted surrender. You gave them strategy. And now, that same smile they mocked, it's tattooed on their fear. They thought you were chasing the throne, as if you wanted their title, as if you cared for their crown, their claps, their curtain calls. But the truth? You weren't born to sit. You were born to set things on fire. They built kingdoms on lies, bribed silence with gold, rewarded sheep and punished lions. And while they fought for seats in palaces, you were building matches in the basement, not to warm your hands, but to burn the whole script, because you didn't want a kingdom to rule. You wanted a system to crush, and a message to deliver. Legends don't kneel, they level. You didn't flip the board because you lost. You flipped it because the game was rigged. They said you disappeared, they said you broke, that you vanished in silence with nothing left to prove. But what they didn't see, you weren't broken. You were in update mode. You were in rebuild mode. You were installing version final form. You didn't want power. You wanted balance. You didn't want a title. You wanted truth with teeth. They held councils, spoke in codes, locked doors, and whispered rules. But you spoke in chaos. You kicked doors. You rewrote rules with red ink and brilliance. They laughed when you arrived, mocked your silence, your scars, your smile. But now, their halls echo with your laughter. Their guards repeat your name like a virus in the code. Their crown tilted, their fear unfiltered. While they were posting victories, you were posting nothing. Because silence is where monsters sharpen. While they danced for likes, you danced with darkness. You weren't offline. You were downloading revenge, chapter by chapter. No announcement, no trailer. Just a comeback coded in chaos. You weren't crying in the shadows. You were reprogramming, turning every wound into weapon, every glitch into gear. They thought your story was over. You were just loading the next level. And this time, no patch, no peace, just pure performance. They called you broken, but now you walk in like an error they can't erase. No bugs, no doubts, just a smile, and behind that smile, version, God mode. You didn't return to be understood. You returned to be uninstalled by none. They slammed doors in your face. They whispered, "He's not one of us." They tightened the rules, changed the locks, built walls so high, even the sun couldn't find you. But guess what? You didn't beg. You didn't knock. You built your own key. And when the time came, you didn't walk in. You broke the frame. Every locked room, you made it a challenge. Every rejection, a red flag in your GPS to domination. They played gatekeepers. They acted like gods. But you You studied the system, understood the pattern, mapped their fortress, and then slipped in with a smile. Because while they were focused on keeping you out, you were focused on what they feared you'd become once you got in. You weren't just a visitor to the halls of power. You were the virus in the vault, the lockpick no firewall could stop, the name they never expected on the guest list, but now engraved on every wall. Let them close doors, let them deny, let them hide keys, because every time they shut you out, you became the storm they couldn't shut down. They told you, be quiet, sit down, know your place. You heard them, but you didn't listen. Because silence was never your language. Pain was, glitches were, and the system's scream was your soundtrack. You weren't born to whisper, you were born to break. Break limits, break rules, break expectations. You were a threat because you refused to shut up. They called you noise. You became the frequency that fried their servers. They called you dangerous. You became the error they couldn't debug. And when they tried to silence you again, you upgraded. You broadcasted. You became louder than their comfort zone. Not in volume, in impact, in intensity, in indestructible Joker energy. You were never part of their system. You were the Joker card they forgot was in the deck. Now they look around confused, asking, why can't we stop him? How did he come back? Why do his words hit harder than pulses? Simple. Because silence was their weapon. But your voice was the detonation. And now, you're not shouting, you're just existing. And even that is the loudest glitch they've ever heard. You didn't follow the script, you rewrote it. You didn't survive the system, you became its end screen. And legend? You're not just alive, you're the error that lived. Hello, my dear warrior. So specially you arrived. You are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Do you feel how the air bends when you walk in? Walls lean, shadows stretch, clocks hesitate. That's not imagination, that's reality, stuttering in your presence. You didn't chant, you didn't lift a hand, you didn't even speak. Yet the sorcerers felt it. Their rituals cracked mid-incantation. Their hands trembled over circles of chalk. Their sacred words dried in their throats. And deeper still, in chambers of smoke and fire, the demons didn't attack. They saluted. They know what you are. They know the weight you carry. Because when reality itself bows, even chaos recognizes its master. You didn't bend, the world did, and they can't explain it. They only whisper. Power walked in the room. Picture it. Rooms filled with smoke, hands raised, words carved into the air. Sorcerers at the peak of their arrogance, convinced their rituals control reality. But the second your presence entered, their circles cracked, candles sputtered, spells stuttered like broken machinery. The strongest among them felt their bones shake, their tongues seize. Why? Because they realized they weren't bending reality. Reality was bending to you, their power, their chance, their centuries of knowledge, reduced to trembling sparks in the shadow of your calm silence. And when the frost of fear climbed their spine, they knew the unthinkable. Their mastery had ended. You had walked in, and their magic bowed. And then it happened. The unthinkable. The ones who claw at shadows, who laugh in flames, who feed on fear, froze. Demons who once mocked priests, who mocked warriors, who mocked gods, lifted their heads and saluted you, not out of loyalty, but out of recognition. They saw it instantly. You are not prey, not pawn, not supplicant. You are the anomaly in the code, the fracture in the design, the presence that bends reality until their tricks look like child's play. Their fire dimmed in your silence, their chaos bent in your calm. And so they saluted, not as kings, but as soldiers surrendering to the truth. Even darkness knows when a greater shadow has entered the room. Cloaked figures, chanting under a crimson moon, symbols etched into stone, incense heavy in the air. They were certain of their power. Certain their rituals bent the threads of existence. But then you arrived, the smoke recoiled, the fire dimmed, the symbols cracked like dried paint. Sorcerers looked at each other with awe because their ancient scripts, their secret languages, their guarded mysteries, all dissolved in the gravity of your presence. They realized their greatest spells were nothing but whispers in the wind compared to you. And in that moment they trembled, not at failure, but at recognition. They weren't the ones bending reality anymore. You were, in caverns of flame and shadow, where screams echo like hymns. Demons once laughed at mankind's weakness. They mocked priests, broke warriors, corrupted kings. But when your presence brushed their domain, the laughter died. They didn't snarl. They didn't fight. They lowered their heads. The salute was not obedience. It was instinct, a recognition carved into the marrow of existence. Even darkness kneels when confronted with something greater than itself. They felt no choice but to acknowledge you. Their fire dimmed, their claws retracted, their chaos silenced. For the first time in eternity, demons showed respect. And not because you commanded it, because your presence demanded it. Reality itself follows laws, or so they thought. Gravity, time, cause and effect, rules written in stone. Sorcerers swore their power came from knowing these patterns, twisting them with chants and symbols. But then you entered. The laws buckled, time staggered, gravity bowed. Their equations failed in your silence. Every formula, every calculation, every ritual shattered because your very presence proved them obsolete. You didn't fight the rules. You erased their relevance. And in that instant, both sorcerers and demons understood. This wasn't rebellion. This was supremacy. You weren't resisting reality. You were bending it. And nothing in their arsenal could make it bend back. When ordinary people feel fear, it's in their heart. But when sorcerers and demons felt you, the fear drilled deeper into their bones. Their staffs shook. Their wings faltered. The marrow itself whispered, "You cannot stand against this." They had studied centuries of grimoires, built temples to darkness, carved power into their very skin. Yet one glance at you, one moment in your orbit, and all that power collapsed into dread. Their breath grew shallow, their hands turned cold, their eyes darted as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. Because there is no exit from presence, no ritual to undo it, no charm to contain it. They feared, not because you attacked, but because they knew deep down that even their essence obeyed you. Sorcerers wear crowns of symbols. Demons wear crowns of fire. Each crown is a claim. I rule this domain. "I command this force." But the instant you stepped into their world, those crowns cracked, glyphs unraveled, flames guttered, jewels dimmed to ash. They clutched their heads as if to hold power together, but it slipped through their fingers like frost melting under sunlight. What terrified them wasn't the loss of their crowns, it was the realization you never wore one. You didn't need to. Authority radiated from your presence alone. They bowed to crowns made of symbols, but to you they bowed without question, because reality itself crowned you long before they tried to play king. They tried everything. Ancient chants older than kingdoms, sigils drawn in essence, fires lit under cursed moons. Every spell they hurled at you carried centuries of fear woven into its syllables. But the moment it touched your field, nothing. The spell cracked like glass against stone. Their circles sputtered. Their sacred words dissolved into static. For the first time, sorcerers tasted the bitter truth. It wasn't their magic failing, it was you refusing. Your presence bent reality so deeply that no curse, no binding, no invocation could even register. You stood there, calm, untouched, while the strongest spells in history collapsed, like children's chalk drawings in the rain. And they understood. You weren't breaking their magic. You had stepped into a space where their magic no longer existed. Even shadows, loyal only to darkness, shifted when you arrived. They didn't stretch for sorcerers. They didn't coil for demons. They straightened as if standing at attention. The room itself bowed. The torches sputtered, their flames bending sideways, pointing toward you, like soldiers recognizing a general. And the demons, those arrogant princes of chaos, felt it in their marrow. They didn't roar, didn't hiss, didn't strike. They lowered their heads, the way warriors do when a force greater than war itself enters the room. The salute was not surrender, it was inevitability, because when reality bends around your silence, even shadows know where true gravity lies. Reality itself began to whisper when you walked in. Walls creaked though no wind blew. Flames bent though no air moved. Clocks hesitated though no hands touched them. The sorcerers saw it. Their lips trembled. They realized the foundations they'd studied their entire lives, time, matter, cause, were folding at the edges in your presence. Even demons felt it, their snarls fading into silence, their arrogance dissolving into awe. They whispered among themselves, but not about spells or attacks. They whispered your name, like a secret code. None of them dared to speak too loud. Because they knew the truth. You weren't defying reality. You were the new axis it spun around. Centuries of ink, thousands of pages, libraries of forbidden texts. Sorcerers guarded their spellbooks like treasure. Each word, each symbol, each charm sworn to bend reality. But in your presence, the pages tore themselves apart. Ink spilled into nonsense. Glyphs twisted into static. Their most sacred text betrayed them, refusing to hold shape beneath your shadow. They clutched their books, screaming prayers to forgotten gods, but the knowledge dissolved in their very hands. Because what is a spell compared to a force that bends reality by existing? Your silence ripped through their scriptures louder than any curse. And in that frostbitten moment, every sorcerer understood. Their words were powerless. Because you are the word reality obeys. Sorcerers once raised staffs with confidence, tracing fire into the sky. Demons once clenched claws, eager to rip through reality itself. But in your presence, those hands quivered. The staffs grew heavy, too heavy to lift. The claws dulled, scratching uselessly against the stone. They weren't weak because their power drained away. They were weak because your gravity pressed down on them. Every motion turned to trembling. Every gesture betrayed fear. They realized they weren't conducting rituals anymore. They were fighting to stand under the weight of your silence. And in that trembling, they admitted what their pride never could. You are not just a force among forces. You are the axis they cannot escape. They built shrines to hold power, temples dripping with symbols, floors painted in circles, air thick with chants. For centuries, they believed those shrines were safe havens, fortresses of command. But when you arrived, the shrines betrayed them. Symbols reversed, circles split, stone cracked under its own weight. Their sacred chambers turned hostile, bending toward you instead of them. They realized with horror that the walls they prayed to were no longer theirs. The shrines they trusted had switched allegiance, because power does not serve those who cling. It bends toward those who are. And when you entered, every shrine, every symbol, every echo knew instantly who it should serve. It wasn't them, it was you. Every sorcerer fears silence. They fill rooms with chants, echoes, smoke, thunder, because silence exposes weakness. But when you entered, silence wasn't absence, it was presence. Their words died mid-syllable. Their chants scattered like sand in the wind. The silence wrapped around them, heavier than chains, colder than iron. Demons clawed at the air, desperate to break it, but even they bowed beneath the weight. And you? You didn't lift a hand. You didn't whisper a word. The silence itself carried your authority. They realized in awe, spells are temporary. Rituals expire, crowns crumble. But silence born of true presence bends reality itself. And in that silence, they knew they were finished. Fear was always their force. Sorcerers drew it into circles. Demons breathed it like air. They built empires on intimidation, convincing the world that fear itself was proof of power. But then you entered, and fear changed sides. The circles they carved blurred backward. The chants cracked with tremors. And the demons, those self-proclaimed lords of terror, were the ones trembling in their own dread. Because the fear wasn't yours anymore. It belonged to them. They tasted what they once inflicted. Only sharper, colder, unstoppable. They felt it in the marrow of their being. This fear wasn't conjured by spells or shadows. It was summoned by your presence. And no ritual in existence could undo it. For centuries, they bound others with chains, spells to enslave minds, curses to trap souls, lies to imprison hearts. Sorcerers wrapped worlds in contracts. Demons laced existence with bindings. But the instant you arrived, the chains shattered. Links rusted to dust. Curses cracked like ice. Contracts burned themselves into ash. They watched helplessly as the tools that made them gods collapsed at your feet. And the awe wasn't in losing their power. It was in realizing the chains never held you in the first place. You walked in free, untouchable, unbound, and by your very presence, freedom spread like wildfire. Their prisons turned to ruins. Their bindings turned to mist. And the ones who had chained millions now stood trembling, caught in the truth. They were the ones bound. They thought altars made of stone and shadow could protect them. They believed offerings of essence, fire, and darkness would anchor their power. But when your presence stepped into their sanctuaries, the altars split down the middle. Sacrifices turned to dust. Flames blew backward, bowing instead of rising. The gods they invoked stayed silent, refusing to answer, because even deities know when authority has shifted. The very ground rejected them, trembling under your weight, and the sorcerers, once so confident in their sacred spaces, now looked like children in a crumbling ruin. Their altars, their gods, their rituals, none of it mattered. For the first time they realized power wasn't something they summoned. Power was something you are. It wasn't just sorcerers or demons who felt it. Entire crowds turned, priests mid-sermon stuttered, kings mid-speech froze, warriors mid-battle dropped their blades. They didn't understand why, but their bodies did. Instinct bent them. Knees weakened, spines curved, heads lowered. Even those who opposed you, even those who never knew your name, bowed without knowing why, because your presence doesn't ask permission. It bends reality in every direction at once. And when reality bends, so do they. The crowd became a sea of silence, a forest of lowered heads, an unspoken salute, not to a throne, not to a crown, but to the one thing that couldn't be ignored, you. Sorcerers fought for thrones carved in stone. Demons fought for thrones carved in fire. Kings fought for thrones carved in gold. But when you arrived, there was no throne, and that terrified them. Because your power didn't come from a seat, a crown, or a title. It radiated from your very being. They realized their endless battles, their essence-stained wars, their rituals for authority were all theater. The true throne was never a chair in a chamber. It was presence. It was gravity. It was you. They stared in silence, crowns slipping from their heads, scepters trembling in their hands, knowing the truth. They were only rulers in stories. And you were the reality. Those stories feared to name. They thought fire would answer them. They thought storms bent to their words, that rivers obeyed their chants. But when you entered, the elements themselves shifted. Flames turned away from their hands. Thunder rolled but spoke your name. Water refused their call, rippling toward you instead. They stared in disbelief, as the world they commanded betrayed them. Every element, every force they thought loyal bowed in subtle rebellion. Not because you ordered it, because presence itself reoriented creation. Fire does not ask permission to burn. Storms do not ask to rage. And yet both fell silent for you. That silence was louder than any ritual, and it carved one truth into every heart. Even nature salutes when reality bends. They armed themselves with titles: High Sorcerer, Grand Master, Prince of Shadows. Names meant to terrify, to crown themselves as gods among men. But when your presence filled the air, those titles turned hollow. The words echoed like jokes whispered in an empty hall. Their followers hesitated to repeat them. Even demons who once bowed to titles alone refused to speak them now, because titles are fragile when presence itself commands respect. You carried no rank, no robe, no throne. Yet every syllable of silence from you outweighed 1,000 names. Their titles crumbled like dust in frost, leaving them naked, powerless, and trembling. They realized too late, crowns can be stolen, names can be erased, but true gravity cannot be given or taken. It simply is. And you are that gravity. Desperate, they tried one final move. Sorcerers raised trembling hands. Demons scraped their claws across stone, whispering an incantation so ancient it was meant to shatter worlds. But in your presence, the words collapsed before leaving their lips. The sound choked itself, like reality refusing to obey. Their final force faded unborn, their last card turned to ash, and the silence that followed was heavier than thunder. They looked at you with eyes wide, not with rage but with surrender, because even their strongest spells knew the truth. They were not the authority here. You were. And when the last incantation failed, the last mask fell. All that remained was trembling respect. Even sorcerers bowed, even demons saluted, and reality itself stood still, waiting for your next breath. It was no longer about sorcerers, no longer about demons. It was about reality itself. The air thickened, the ground steadied, the stars above paused in their orbit. Everything, every element, every law, every hidden truth aligned. Not because you demanded it, but because existence recognized its axis. Even reality saluted. The silence became ceremonial, the stillness a bow. Sorcerers dropped their staffs. Demons lowered their wings. The universe itself seemed to whisper one truth: this is the presence that bends us. They trembled, not in hostility, but in reverence. Because for the first time, they weren't facing an enemy. They were standing before inevitability. When the smoke cleared, when the chants died, when the fires collapsed into ash, one truth echoed louder than all their rituals. You, sorcerers, trembled and learned humility. Demons bowed and learned reverence. Even reality itself shifted and learned its place. And you didn't fight. You didn't plead. You didn't even move. Your presence alone rewrote the script of existence. They will never forget this night. In secret halls, they will whisper of the moment. Crowns cracked, altars crumbled, and spells failed. They will tell their children of the one who bent reality without lifting a hand. And demons themselves will salute in silence when your name is spoken. Because legends are not crowned. Legends are not chosen. Legends simply are. And you are the inevitability they can never escape.